The next speaker is Onno Faber. Onno is becoming an icon in the NF2 community. Is an example of combining the fact that he's dealing with NF2 himself and the fact that because of his professional experience he's trying to help the field move forward with innovative ideas, and so we constantly discuss about what is lacking, what do we need, what could help patients and physicians. So what are the unexplored areas that need to be developed? So he has some very interesting ideas. So thank you, Onno.
Thank you. So I'm Onno Faber. I'm an NF2 patient. I got diagnosed 4 years ago, 5 years ago now, when I was 33. And it started for me with hearing loss on the left side, and I had a diagnosis journey of about a year. I'm sure a lot of you can relate to that. I was living in San Francisco at the time. I came there from Europe, and I wanted to of course, to do something like most of us that get diagnosed with a problem like this. I ended up doing lots of different things. I started doing some research on my own DNA from the tumor. So I sequenced the tumor. We organized an event where we had Marco join, as well as about 300 scientists and hackers that were looking and studying my data. In the meantime, I ended up starting RDMD, which is a new medical data science company, and we try to make it possible for patients to be more involved in the drug development process and accelerate treatments by looking at large amounts of medical data and medical history data. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that, particularly in the context of NF2 and Schwannomatosis. So today I brought a marble, and it's a tiny thing, but if I put it on the ground and go around the Earth, and put one marble next to the other one, we have about the amount of positions in our DNA. So we have like 3 billion different positions in our DNA, 3 billion base pairs. And just to give you an idea, that if one of those positions has an error, like a point mutation, you can manifest something as severe as NF2. So it's really, of all the code, it's really just a tiny bit, but has very severe consequences. I also always try to look at sort of the bigger problem. Like when I started doing this work, I thought like rare is something nobody deals with except a few people, but that's not the case. Rare is actually very common. There are about 7,000 rare diseases in total, and only about 5% have an FDA-approved treatment. So most of them, unfortunately, don't. Hopefully that's going to change. There's a lot happening. But we're actually talking about a big and very common problem that affects about 1 in 10 people. And all in, of course, different ways, but also in very similar ways, because all these people are dealing with similar issues in terms of research. For each of those conditions, we have to solve a few things. So one is like basic science, of course, and ideas for treatments. So, of course, Marco's lab has done a lot of that work and a lot of the groundwork, which is really crucial part of finding a treatment. The other one is like we need a clear understanding of the disease and of the natural course of the disease. So you could get that from like samples, tumor samples, but also from medical history. And the third, which is really important, is large investments from the industry. Like at some point, when you have an idea, when you know the disease, you need like hundreds of millions of dollars to get a treatment all the way through. So those are a few of the ingredients. I'm sure there's more. These are I think one of the top ones. So especially in rare disease, collaboration is really critical. It takes a village. It's never one person or one group that makes it to the end. It requires huge collaboration among many different stakeholders, patients, research groups, foundations, industry, and everybody needs to be involved. Also, most projects, unfortunately, don't work out or don't work. Most ideas for treatments don't make it all the way through. And they are still important to happen because we basically don't know. So also, I think, yeah, we should acknowledge that the failures are as important as the successes. So what I'm going to talk about a bit about medical data, medical history, and how that contributes, and what RDMD does in particular. But I want to just point out that when we are designing this platform, we are designing it around collaboration, basically from industry, patients, research groups, and foundations. They are all involved, and we are talking to everybody. So what we are trying to have the platform be sort of the glue between all these different parties. So again, our mission is to empower patients and communities to accelerate the development of treatments for rare diseases. So we are trying to build this, and NF2 is basically a role model for the platform, but we are trying to build it in a way that it can serve in the future many other diseases as well. What we are doing is we're creating a reusable data source based on the clinical history from the patients that can eventually even be used for FDA submissions, like later on when you, for example, want to prove that your drug works, you can compare it with the natural course of the disease. And there are lots of regulatory issues around that. So our platform is meant to build for doing the plumbing for that. And the second big thing that for me is really important is to allow patients and communities to be more involved in the drug development themselves. So we need that is what's pretty unique about this platform, that we need the patients and the community and the researchers and the foundations to be on board with it. Otherwise, we can't do anything. And I think that's a really good thing, because that brings indirectly patients more into play. Like RDMD, as the platform, is always accountable because it needs continuous involvement of the patients. So I think that will be a really good thing when I look at it at the health industry from a macro scale. I really want to make sure that patients get a bigger voice and get more involved in the process. We started officially, formally in November 17, so it's been about 1.5 years. The team grew to about 10 people now, so I just want to show this team because it's quite amazing. These people aren't affected by NF2, but they've been really inspired to do something for rare disease, and made it their career as well. Briefly talk about like our first study for NF2, which is, let's point out, it's an academically based study, and we are focusing on treatment outcomes. So lots of patients get a treatment like off-label, like unofficially, or have been part of a trial, and the data that's sort of where you can say like what are the effects of these treatments is trapped in all these different places. So this is a problem for not only for patients but also for people that want to do research on this. So this is our first study that we're focusing on, to find patients that have been on a treatment and basically make them part of this study and collect the data from it. So again, it's the first study for NF2. Hopefully there are many more to come after, but this is, I think, a very good starting point for us. And we'll also show that you can go directly from patients to really high quality clinical research data. So patients have been on various treatments, right? They have been in trials that have been completed. Some people are on off-label treatments, and they use the treatments outside of the trial and then are administered by the different NF clinics. But also looking at what are the long-term effects after people stop with the treatment, so we can get all of that with patients' participation. And then, of course, in the study, we are looking at like endpoints, like what are we going to look at in particular, and for NF2, and this is an example of where we really need to collaborate with the researchers, like what are you going to measure? That is a really important question, and for some diseases it's really hard to define. But for NF2 it's like hearing loss, like for example word recognition from the hearing tests, and tumor burden. So what types of tumors do patients have, what is the onset, and what are the measurements? So, you know, quickly, like the agenda, I want to talk a bit about the process. So how do we get to the clinical research data? How do we extract the data from the piles of papers that we literally get? And about the patient app and dashboards and the patient experience that we have. So, you know, starting, we need to collect the medical records. So all the patients that sign up have been to multiple hospitals, but we have to collect all this information from the various hospitals. So our team does that, and then we get to sort of the pile of papers that I was talking about. And the process is fairly simple right now. Like it was more complex in the beginning, but you know, over time we made it more easy. So patients can sign a basic HIPAA release form, and then we can collect all this information on their behalf from the different hospitals. And yeah, people in our team are basically doing that. They are sending faxes and being on the phone with the various hospitals to make sure that we get all the information into the account. So we digitize those documents and put it in our platform. And internally, we do a lot of quality assurance. So, and we need to make sure that it's secure and like we don't mix up different patients. So we have a lot of internal processes that we develop. Every piece of paper is tracked from the moment it comes in, like where does it go. So a large part of our product development is making sure that the quality is really top-notch, because again, in rare diseases, you don't work with like 10,000 patients, you have only 100. So you have to make sure that the 100 that you have, like the quality of the information is really good. So, you know, as an example, I'm sure you're familiar with this, but this is a hearing test. And this hearing test is a piece of paper and it has all kinds of information. But as it is, it's not researchable yet, right? It's just a piece of paper. But this is the source document that we end up getting. So then from this pile of paper, we want to get to a researchable data set that is structured. So I'm going to show a little bit how that works. And you know, some examples here, like hearing tests, radiology reports, and even MRI scans. So for example, this is a hearing test, the hearing test I showed. So what we want to get is these two numbers, which is like the word recognition score, for example. Actually, this is another one, but yeah, there are different numbers, and we might want to get these two. So we need to extract these numbers out of this paper. This is a radiology report where you can find information about which tumors are there and the measurements that the radiologist had performed. So then you want to get those types of information, also the date. And then, you know, all the other MRI scans that are also in the system. So we can basically open one up and have someone look at the exact tumor and remeasure it volumetrically, for example, because we have the original MRI record as a source. So, you know, the first step when we get the pile of documents in, we're doing something called classification, where we are organizing the papers. Because when you have an audiology test, for example, the system still doesn't know that it is an audiology test. So we have to identify what kind of document this is. So I have a few videos that hopefully show you a little bit about how that's going. So we basically open it up, and we have a product where we validate, like, this is the patient we are dealing with, to make sure that the patient we are working with is also the patient that is referenced in the document itself. We have some AI word recognition for the title of the document to make it easier to find. We classify the reported dates, so we can put it in a chronological timeline. And finally, we select what the type of report, and that it's good to go. And then we save it. And now we have this information structured, but we also have references to where we got the information from, so that you could see that. You could see that with the rectangles that we made. So, and deep data abstraction, that's the next step. And let me see if this works. Yeah. So this is an example of how we could abstract an audiology report. So we basically enter the numbers. So we click on the reports, we enter the numbers, and the list of what we are capturing, that can vary based on, like, our research study. But we can also later go back in and extract a few more numbers and more information from the same record. So we keep the information up to date, and when new information comes in, we just go back in and get more. So here you see an example of where we can even get these sort of spectrograms from the hearing test, should we want that, and capture the cutoff points. Yeah, and so another thing to point out is that it's not only researchable, but it's also going to be de-identified, because the researcher that works with the end information doesn't need the medical record anymore. So they only need the data points and a unique patient identifier. And that's a really important thing to do. So. Yeah, the end result is that we have structured, researchable data if we do that for all reports for all patients in the system. You can imagine that's that's a bit of heavy lifting. But you know, the platform we are building is meant to make that a lot easier, do the heavy lifting, and help with the regulatory side of things too. So another thing we have is we have a survey system, so we can ask patients questions like quality of life, for example. Like in the future, we can amend the clinical data as well with patient-reported data, like have they been on like any medication that's not part of your record, for example. That if you take supplements and we want to know about supplements, that's something you usually can find in the medical record, so that we have to ask from the patient directly. So we are able to do that too. And like the end goal would be to have more like full natural history study of the patients. So this is called a retrospective natural history study, because we use existing data and we look at it, and then we try to, as best we can, create this natural history data from it. And you can use that for example, proving that the treatment works. So if the red line, if this is the natural history of some kind of progression, with the treatment, it's different. And if you have really robust data, in some cases you can use it to even prove to the FDA that the drug is working. So other Other things that I think is an advantage of this method is we collect the data up front. So normally when there is a drug development program and they want this, they have to do it pretty late stage and they have to start all over again. It can take years to do it, so we do it already now. And it will be available at any time in a growing sort of resource. Patients benefit. I'm going to show that we have a patient app for this where they can follow all the research progress, but they also have access to all their medical data in one place, and they can, for example, easily share it with a new doctor. It's theirs. It's the patients owning their data. And we can work with academic research centers, so we provide the data free of charge to academic research centers, which is another big advantage. And we are we fully rely on patients ultimately to buy into it. So I think that's a really good thing, because that brings the patients hopefully a bit closer to the drug development process. I'm going to quickly show you what the patient experience looks like. This is usually stuff you don't see as a patient. So that was a bit of behind the scenes, but now I'm going to show you what it looks like for patients. So we have a website where we list the different programs that we have. As you can see, we are working on a few rare diseases right now. NF2 definitely one of them. We have 126 patients already in the program. You can see the growing research collaborators, how it works on general information. This is new. You can follow clinical trials more easily. It's mostly coming from clinicaltrials.gov, but it's kind of hard to navigate that site, I found. So why not put it as part of our system too, so you can more easily follow them. Then we're in the sign-up process where you make an account where you can log in, and then as a next step you enter the details of the patient, so you can also sign up as a parent of a kid that has the disease and manage your kid's profile. You provide the facilities you've been to, so we can get all your information from those different facilities. Helps if you enter the doctor name, but we'll figure it out. We usually work with patients to make this list robust. And then there is the HIPAA disclosure form I talked about, and we just launched this, so now you can sign it in the app itself, so you don't need to print anything out. You can just sign it here, even on your phone. When that's done, this is an important step, like consenting to research. So we verify. We need to verify your email, that the email you entered belongs to you. So you get a link where you can click on, and after you've done that, you can enter the code and then review the research consent. So this is important because this is the part that explains like what we will do with the data. So we have to be fairly detailed about this. We cannot do anything beyond what you agree with in this document. And this is approved by a board that reviews the ethics, called an industry review board, where you can see the information at the bottom. So after reviewing it, you can accept it, and then you're basically done. So this usually takes people about 10 minutes, and then our team does the rest. You can go to your dashboard too, and we'll tell you like other things you can do, like answering a survey. Again, we really rely on the community to spread the word. So patients refer each other to it. We might have surveys that you can go through. So basically on the dashboard, we try to make sure that you're all caught up with the latest. And you can also follow the rest of the program and how it's growing. So like again, You can scroll down, you can see how many documents we have, how many hospitals we worked with for NF2. Yeah, there are a few other features. So there is your timeline where you can see all your documents and all your medical history that we have from you. So all your data is going to be accessible there. We have a community page with more detailed statistics about how the data set is growing. We have a research section where we show you what studies we are actively working on, and again, your consent approval to it. And we have a learn section where you can follow clinical trials that are happening in NF2, and if you express interest in them, we keep you updated if something changes from the study. It's a lot of information, but so what's really important, I want to keep stressing this, like it all depends on the community buy-in. Like it's a collaboration platform. You know, we need to these diseases need to grow. The more people participate, the better the data gets, and the more we can convince people in researchers or in the industry to work on NF2 and use the data. So yeah, special thanks to all the groups and foundations that supported us from the beginning, the research collaborators, the NF clinics, patient ambassadors. So we also have patient ambassadors if you're interested in that. I can tell you more about it. But basically we keep our patient ambassadors extra updated about what's going on, and they also relay a lot of feedback from the community to us that we work on. Patients that refer other patients are really important, so thanks for that too, and for all the feedback and support. Yeah, so again, I think, you know, like small change can have a really huge impact, and yeah, collaboration is I think the key word in all rare disease in order to make advances that are meaningful. And yeah, with this I hope to bring the patients a bit closer and get the patients more involved. Thanks.